Information on the project, but engaged with the are able to ask questions.
Andy, do you want to talk to me for a minute and let me adjust my volume on my speakers?
I can help out with that, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. How are you tonight?
I'm doing all right. That's the easiest thing anyone's asked of me all day.
We need to have more people talking to you, don't we? Mr. Finn, good to see you.
Hey guys, hi Randy. I made it.
You did. I like that. I haven't run a meeting in 2 years.
I need to send you anyway the new thing. The my
I think that
notes.
would be great just in case.
Yeah, that's
I would be
I'm
going by Tom memory here, so.
yeah, I'm trying to operate under the when I get hit by a bus theory from now on, so nothing will miss a beat.
Yeah, if you could just email that to me, that'd be really cool.
Yep, I will do that. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi, gentlemen. How are you?
Doing well. Yourself?
Yeah, hanging in there. I agree with Andy that would have been a great task for the easiest one of the day. So I'm disappointed I didn't get that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. La dee 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 dee. So I think, Shelley, are we still waiting on someone?
I've got Tanya over here, but she's, oh, here she is.
All right, there's Tanya. So we have 6 members present?
We do.
Is that what we were expecting since the slacker Tom Finn showed up? Okay. So since we have 6 present and we're at 7:01, I will call the Board of Adjustments and Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Warwick, if you could please take the roll.
Mr. Rieger, Ms. Schmitz, Mr. Friesen,
Present.
Mr. Thompson,
Present.
Mr. Taylor,
Present.
Ms. Hoffman,
Present.
Ms. Spencer,
Present.
Chair Finn.
And I am also here.
It looks like we've Angela as well.
All
and
right.
Erin. Well, hold on just a moment here. We've got. Looks like we've Angela and Erin as well.
Awesome.
So we have more than a quorum.
Nice. I believe we have 8 members present.
Okay, I'm here.
Hi, Angela.
Hi. I had a little trouble with the link from the email. I don't know why.
No worries. So if we have 8 present, how many votes are required?
We only need 7 for a quorum.
Right.
So because Ms. Spencer is an alternate.
Oh, okay. So Ms. Spencer will be an alternate tonight.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. It is very rare that we actually have an alternate. Usually we have all the members participating. Okay. So approval of minutes.
Tom, do you need to have the rest of the roll call then?
Yep. Let's go ahead and Ms. Warwick, if we can just note that Ms. Schmitz
Mr. Rieger
and Mr. Rieger joined.
and Ms. Schmidt and Ms. Schmitz.
I'm here.
Okay.
All right, perfect. So we will approval of minutes from August 11th, 2021, the draft minutes. I need a motion and a second.
We'll move to approve them.
Second.
All right, we will just do a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No one opposed. And then a approval of finding of the findings of fact from case VAR 2021-009, which was 2400 West Union Avenue. Again, I need a motion and a second.
I'll move again.
And a second.
I'll
Second.
second that one.
Thank you. All right, voice vote again. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Perfect. So there are 7 members present, therefore 5 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance's effective date. Procedure for the meeting is that the case will be introduced. An overview will be given by staff. Applicant will present their case and request and state the reasons variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will address the board if present, and if needed, staff will again address the board. The public hearing for case VAR 2021-011, Brenda Hubka. The property is at 3639 South Fox Street. The request is for a variance for an accessory dwelling unit to be located outside of the rear 35% lot placement requirement for accessory dwelling structures in the MUR3B zone district. That case is now open. I have the verification of publication and posting for the subject property that everyone should have received that via email. Staff, if you could give us an overview.
Sure.
Eric,
I need
can I
to do
swear
my
you
the
in
right
first?
hand thing.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Eric Sampson, Planner 2 with City of Englewood Community Development Department. So I'm going to try to share my screen here. Okay, so Can everybody see this okay?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, so this is for variance case 2021-011. And the applicant's Brenda Hubka, and the address is 3639 South Fox Street. So the request is a variance for an accessory dwelling unit or ADU to be located outside of the rear 35% of the lot placement requirement for the rear property in the MU3B zone district. The structure will be located in the rear 42% of the property, or 8.4 feet. So here's a overview of the subject property, and the structure that has kind of the light green circle around it is the structure in question. So Ms. Hubka had begun the accessory dwelling unit process with a development review team meeting. And it was during that meeting we noticed that the existing garage structure was located outside of the rear 35% of the lot, which is a requirement in the ADU code. So staff referred the variance application to building, engineering, fire, parks and rec, and utilities. And all departments, aside from building, made a recommendation of conditional approval. The building division stated that the concrete slab that the garage is situated on will need to be brought up to current residential code prior to the ADU being approved for conversion. So for the analysis, okay, so here's some pictures of the existing structure. And so for the first criteria that the board looks at is that unique physical conditions exist, such as size, shape, location, topography, or surroundings, which are peculiar to the land or structure involved. So for any new ADU construction, the code regulations require that the structure, again, located on the rear 35% of the property. So the average Inglewood lot is 50 feet by 125 feet. And so that rear 35% would calculate into 43.75 feet of the rear of the property. So the existing structure, this structure is largely in that 35% requirement. Percentage-wise, the converted garage was extend outside the 35% requirement by 6.7% or 8.4 feet. Since the structure to be utilized as an ADU is already existing, the code creates a unique challenge here to the property owner in complying with this ADU regulation without a complete demolition and relocation and reconstruction of the structure. Another unique characteristic about this is the MUR3B zone district in which the parcel is located. The zone allows for multifamily development with more relaxed development standards compared to other Inglewood residential zone districts. The MUR3B zoning allows for the development of 2 units on the parcel with relatively few placement restrictions aside from zoning setbacks. So technically, Ms. Hubka could remodel the garage into a second living unit and be in compliance with the zoning code while keeping the structure in its original location. However, since the structure is being defined as an ADU, that 35% requirement is applied per code. The second criteria, let me here, this is kind of a, you can kind of see the proposed site plan for the ADU. The second criterion is that the variance is consistent with the intent of the zone district regulations to secure public health, safety, and welfare. So the intent of the 35% rear lot requirement is to guide new ADU development in a manner consistent with many other communities that have implemented ADU regulations. In addition, the intent of the 35% rear lot requirement was to ensure that any new ADU structures would be constructed behind the primary residence and also be a subordinate structure to the primary residence. The conversion of the garage into an ADU would still meet the intent of the regulation, as again, the majority of the structure would be located in that rear 35% of the lot. And then staff found that there would be no adverse impacts to the intent of the zone district, nor to the health, safety, and welfare of the community if the variance were to be approved. The third criterion is that the variance will not permanently impair the use or development of adjacent conforming properties or alter the essential character of the neighborhood. And again, staff found that granting this variance would not impair the use of adjacent properties, nor adversely impact adjacent properties. Finally, the fourth criterion is that the variance is not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship. And so the variance request, we're not considering this to be a self-imposed hardship, as the applicant is proposing to create an ADU in a zone district, which grants it as a use by right. The location of the garage is not something that was originally established or determined by Ms. Hubka. In addition, the cost to the property owner of removing the existing garage and foundation slab to relocate the structure 8.4 feet closer to the rear property line could be considered an undue hardship for a structure that meets all the intents and purposes of the ADU code requirements. So considering all these items, the Community Development Department recommends that the variance request be approved.
Thank you. Questions for staff? And I'll start off. So why are we here? Because it seems to me like she doesn't need a variance. For the reason you stated of the zoning. So I'm curious why when this wasn't caught earlier, we went down the path of a variance and we just didn't go the other path.
Oh, so since it's considered an ADU technically and not a secondary residential structure, then that 35% ADU requirement kicks in. And so since this is an ADU, we take a look at that regulation in that situation.
I guess the question that would echo Tom is that why isn't it just considered a second residence? What precludes it from being that?
So a second residence would have a little bit more leniency in the size allowed. ADU requirements only, they basically restrict the maximum size to be 650 square feet, and among other different requirements for ADUs. So it's technically an ADU and not a second living residence because it's going to need to comply with those other ADU requirements.
But if she did a separate unit, it wouldn't have to be a large unit, right? I mean,
That's
could
correct.
it just be called a second unit and build it?
Yeah, that's correct. For our intents and purposes, on the planning side, we just like to, if it's an ADU, we like to refer to it as an ADU, just to avoid confusion.
So procedurally, if the ADU application was withdrawn and she just got building permits for a second dwelling, is there any obstacle to that?
No, so you just have to go through the development review process.
Would you not have to go through the development review process with an ADU? Is that the point?
No, you still have to go through the development review process for either.
Okay, so explain this to me like I'm not the smartest tool in the turnip truck. There is no difference virtually for, in this case, that this structure is either an ADU or a second residence. There's no, she doesn't have to comply with any regulations differently other than the 35% and the size, but there's nothing extra that she would have to do for a second residence that she.
So the ADU would actually, that requires a primary residency requirement as well, that she would need to be a primary resident on the property while she's either renting the ADU or while someone else is living in the structure.
Okay, so a second residence would not?
Right.
Okay,
So I'm thinking maybe we hear from the applicant about why, if there's a reason for going down the ADU path. I don't know.
no, I think that, yeah, she can answer some of this, I think. I just wanted to get a clarification if there was any huge difference from the city's, the staff's point of view.
Right, I mean, are there different, would a second dwelling require more parking or anything like that?
No, not necessarily. It's just largely that the ADU kind of fits into its own little box of regulations here.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I was a little confused by the building department's comment. What's involved in bringing a slab up to code, and is that going to involve demolition anyway?
I will refer to the applicant to that question,
Okay.
because I know she knows a little bit more about that than I
All
Can I
right,
speak?
not yet, hold on. Any other
Okay.
questions for staff? All right, so no other questions for staff at this time. However, we might recall you. If the applicant could come forward to testify in the case, and Ms. Hubka, if you could please state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath and swear you in.
I'm
It's
Brenda
like-
Hubka, 639 South Fox Street, Englewood, Colorado, 80110.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. Hubka.
Hi.
So we got a couple of questions. And if you want to address, and we got everything that you submitted with your packet. So we got that delivered to us. So we understand all the arguments and the issues that you pointed out in everything you submitted to the city. I was just curious. So we had Mr. Taylor who asked, so if you could speak to, you're welcome to speak to anything, but if you could also speak to specifically to the slab improvements and what would be required for that.
Yes, the slab now, this is the garage that was built way after the house was built in in the mid 1990s. We have looked at the footing, and the footing does meet energy efficiency, is that the footings are 36 inches deep. We have not looked at the inner side, inner slab, but we do have plans to excavate and make that energy efficient, also going at least 24 inches according to code. But at least the surround is 36 inches. And we already have an entrance into the sewer. It's as if the homeowners that built this garage kind of planned for this to be a second residence. I didn't know that that was an option, being a second residence. And I'll tell you how this came to fruition, or what came to my mind is my dad moved in during his last year of life here, and I took care of him in this 2-bedroom house. And then I made an office in that garage, and I froze my butt off. So really the thought was just to make that a room. And then, well, if we're going to make it a room, make it, convert the whole garage. And if we're going to convert the whole garage, and my uncle can't use it right now, or anybody else, then let's go ahead and rent it out. In order to rent it out, I would need to make this an ADU. So I'm asking to allow the variance to make this an ADU today.
But you could also rent it out if it's just a second residence.
I would hope so. I'm not, yeah, I'm a little confused. I thought there had to be an ADU. So I hope that, really, because of all the remodeling and, I mean, all the tear downs and scrapes that's happening around me, that I can use this as a vacation rental. Apparently there's more of a return on your investment that way. And that doesn't have to be permanent. It's easier to turn a vacation rental into a permanent rental if you decide, oh, that's too much, or there's too many complaints, the neighbors don't like it. You can make it a permanent rental. But either way, I really thought that you had to have an ADU application before the city.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, I mean,
Ms.
it's gonna
Hubka?
go back, I think, go back to staff on that same question, because the way I understand the code, there's no real difference in this zoning that wouldn't allow you to do that as a second unit. You could still rent it out, but theoretically, I guess you could even sell it off at some point in the future, which you can't do as an ADU.
Right, and the other point, I think that's a valid point, is if in the future she doesn't have to live in the house and she could rent out both properties, both units on that property. Where with an ADU, she has to live in the primary house.
Yes. Well, you have to live in one of the units. You can live in either one.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of that.
Well, and I'll ask you point blank, would that seem like the path that you would rather go down because it opens up additional options to you?
Yes, but how would the city feel if I made this a vacation rental as a second residential unit? Would I get in trouble?
We can go back to staff and ask that.
Yeah, so short-term rentals are actually not allowed in ADU structures. What you could do is live in the ADU and then rent out to primary residence as a short-term rental. But yeah, with an ADU, it'd only be allowed long-term rentals or 30 days or longer.
Yep. So real quick, so I don't want to get out of order here, but we just jump back to staff. Is that acceptable, Shelley, that we jump back to staff at this point and talk to staff, and then we jump back to Ms. Hubka?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Sampson, so if it's an ADU, it cannot be a short-term rental, a vacation rental?
Correct.
But if it's a second residence, can it be a vacation rental?
No. That would need, again, there's like a primary residency requirement for the short-term rentals, and that primary residency requirement basically limits this structure to the primary residence, if that makes sense.
That does not make sense.
Okay, so just similar to the renting your ADU out as a short-term rental, it's not allowed by code. Okay, same situation in the short-term rentals. If you have a primary residence and you happen to have two houses on your lot, the house that is your primary residence is the only one that's eligible to be a short-term rental, right? So renters, if you're renting a property in Englewood, you are not allowed to rent it out as a short-term rental. You need to be the primary resident of the structure.
Okay, so both that would be both for the ADU and the second house that would be on this lot that is that she can do because of the zone.
Yep.
Okay, so while we're at staff, does the board have any other questions for staff at this point? All right, so we will, staff, we're done with you again for the moment, and we will jump back to Ms. Hubka. So we got a little bit clarification for short-term rentals. Do either, so here I can tell you, I think, and the board can chime in, that I think part of our issue might be when we discuss this is that if we open Pandora's box for an ADU, we might get a lot more people talking, because once suddenly we give someone 8 feet, someone will say, I want 10 feet, someone will want 12 feet. Your case is a little bit different in the fact that you don't have to go the ADU route at all. So in essence, we could deny your variance and you could still get what you're asking for, which is, I think, using this second unit as a second residential unit on the property. Is that so? Virtually, or are we getting to are you going to use it for anything specific that you would want to have this purely as an ADU?
I don't understand the difference. I mean, when I looked up in code, I thought that just building a second residential unit was an ADU. I didn't think there was two things.
I see.
So now I'm really confused, right? Why didn't I just do this to begin with? Right? Do we skip the planning committee and we go straight to just building permits? Is that what we do?
I think you would still have to go. I think all the steps from a standpoint of getting each one approved would be exactly the same. It's just you wouldn't have had to go through a variance hearing.
Oh, for heaven's sake.
I'm sorry to break.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to be the one to break that news to you.
Yeah, no, it's a little bit silly. Is there a different crew? I guess I want to know. Yeah, what are my next steps? If you deny this variance, am I going to end up in the same meeting for a second residential unit?
You won't end up in a meeting with us again.
Okay.
So
Not that I don't love meeting with you all.
we appreciate that.
I would have liked to have started this project a month ago, and not buy $60 sign and put all this out there if it wasn't necessary. I really assumed that residential unit, second residential unit, is the same as an ADU. So maybe you all can help me, or Eric, send me the steps.
I'm gonna suggest something that instead of Ms. Hubka having to make the choice on the spot of whether to go through our vote right now, that we could potentially continue this. And if there's an alternative that's a good alternative, she can, say we don't need to do that continued meeting. What do y'all think of that?
I think that's a great idea. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yep, I would agree with Ms. Schmitz. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it's going to save us.
I
from
think
reviewing.
my only comment on that would be is it has the potential of setting this Hubka back another month.
If there is not a path forward,
right,
with a second residential unit.
I mean, we're kind of into our conversations here again. Maybe we need to get back to staff and.
So let's. So does anyone else have? Because we can address this in discussion. Anyone else have questions for Ms. Hubka at this point? All right.
I'd like to go back to staff.
Yep. Ms. Hubka, I think we're through with you for the time being. We're going to go back to staff. Mr. Sampson.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Randy, you want to go ahead with?
Yeah, Eric. So, are we missing something here? On the.
No, not that I'm aware of. I was basically, staff was basically under the impression that it was an ADU is an ADU. And that's what it is. You know, when we were looking at the MUR 3B zoning, we're doing the staff report, and we realized, well, you know, she could do a second residence. I mean, there's limitations either way on what you could do. For example, if you do a second residence, you wouldn't be able to subdivide the property and sell off that second residence. And it also does open the door for, let's say, if Ms. Hubka were to sell off the property, say in 5 years, then somebody could come in and rent out both structures as you know, long-term rentals. And so from staff's perspective and considering the surrounding neighborhood, we kind of looked at this property as more of an R1C zone district, which it's not, but it's more of a fit to the neighborhood than mixed use residential.
So I have another question that's for you, Eric. Would she be able to, is the only advantage of doing this as an ADU is that she could still convert the primary structure into a duplex at some point, or take that down and build a duplex and still have a third unit essentially on that lot?
No, so if you have a duplex on a property, then you are kind of prohibited from building an ADU in addition to.
But if it's a second unit, I mean, can you have 3 units on that property, I guess is Andy's question.
No, because you would actually need to meet the square footage requirement per unit. And I do believe that's 3,000 square feet per unit. And the property is 6,250. So 2 would be the max number of units you would be able to get on the property. And unless the duplexes were built side by side, you would not be able to subdivide and sell them off because you would need like 25 foot of frontage for each unit.
So is there any downside to, instead of calling this an ADU, to go the route of a second residential unit?
I only think you know, and it depends on your take on it as well, but it's, you know, opens the door to having 2 rentals on one property in the future.
But that's the choice the landowner should be able
That's
to
correct,
make on their
yes.
own. Right. All right. Any other questions for staff at this point? Okay. Are there any, Shelley, do we have any people, any other people who wish to speak in favor of this request or in opposition?
We do not.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff before we close? All right. The public hearing is now closed. Do I have a motion and a second for board discussion?
I move that we continue a vote on this matter until our next meeting to allow the applicant to explore alternative approval paths.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. I think that sounds like an awesome idea. I think y'all are, once again, you show how smart you are, which is fantastic. Anyone have any, Randy, I understand like kind of your angst about some of this, but I think that Ms. Hubka has a choice before her that
Yeah, no,
she needs to make.
I think this is a good option because I think she can go through and try to get that whole process started. If it really doesn't work for some reason, from staffing point of view, then she can come back and get the variance from us. Ask for it. Shouldn't be a long meeting at that point.
Perfect. Any other discussion or should we just vote? All right. Ms. Work, if you could, we're going to vote.
Mr. Rieger,
I vote yes.
Ms. Schmitz,
I vote yes.
Mr. Friesen,
I vote yes.
Mr. Thompson,
I vote yes.
Mr. Taylor,
I vote yes.
Ms. Hoffman,
Yes.
Chair Finn,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right,
move the-
so, oh, go ahead.
No, to move the meeting or to
Yep,
postpone or,
The vote. Yep. So, okay, awesome. Perfect. I like this. I think we made a lot of progress in a very
Can we do this with all of our cases?
this is great. Staff, do you have anything else other than us just adding more work to your plate?
No, I don't have anything else.
Perfect.
I was gonna say, I think all we did was continue it on the zoning's plate.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we'll sit down with Brenda and the building department and everybody we need to talk to and see if there's any obstacles for making it a second residence as opposed to an ADU. So
Perfect. Yeah, and I think then she can have all the information and
Yeah.
she can
I
move
agree.
forward. Awesome. All right, Dugan missed all the fun tonight, so I'm assuming that he had nothing for us.
we will have a different person representing the city attorney's office. Dugan is no longer with the city.
Hopefully it was his choice and he retired and he's living a happy life. All right, so we'll have a new attorney joining us. Board's choice. At some point, we'll actually see each other again and perhaps cheers. So I think that's it for tonight. We'll see you guys perhaps next month with
Yeah.
Ms. Hubka or maybe not.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See ya.
See
Bye-bye.
you.
See.